Today in this video we will be completely discussing about DBMS, right? So we will start with entity first, right? What is entity? Entity is any real world object about which data is stored. So any real world object about which data is stored is called entity. Suppose some examples I take. Suppose student is an entity, employee is an entity, book is an entity, right? कोई भी रियल लाइफ ऑब्जेक्ट जिससे रिलेटेड हम डेटा स्टोर करते हैं वो एंटिटी होता है. सपोज वी हैव कॉलेज डेटाबेस, राइट? हमारा कॉलेज एक डेटाबेस है, तो उसके जो एंटिटीज होंगे वो स्टूडेंट्स, टीचर्स और डिपार्टमेंट्स होंगे, राइट? नाउ व्हाट इज एंटिटी सेट? अ कलेक्शन ऑफ सिमिलर एंटिटीज इज कॉल्ड एंटिटी सेट. यानी कि वो कलेक्शन जिसमें सिमिलर एंटिटीज पाए जाते हैं उसको हम एंटिटी सेट बोलेंगे. For example, all students will form an entity set, right? All employees together form an employee entity set, right? Now, what is attribute? Attribute is a property of or characteristic of an entity. So मेरा जो entity है, जो real world objects है, उनकी जो properties है वो attributes है. For example, एक student का attribute होगा roll number, age, right, phone number. Now types of attributes, simple attributes which cannot be divided further. So age cannot be divided further, but composite attributes are those attributes which can be divided further. For example, name can be divided in first name and last name, right? Address can be divided in city, state, pin, right? Now, single valued attributes are those attributes or those property which have only one value. For example, Aadhaar number is a single valued attribute, right? What is multi-valued attribute? Multi-valued attribute can have multiple values. For example, phone numbers or skills. A same person can have different skills. Suppose he can play guitar or he can dance, but he has only one Aadhaar number, right? So this is single valued attribute and this is multi-valued attribute, right? Now, next is constraint. So, constraints are rule applied on data. They ensure correctness, consistency, and integrity. Now, types of constraints are domain constraints, which defines only allowed data, allowed values, right? मेरा जो domain constraints है, वो कुछ allowed values को ही define करता है. For example, जो age है, it must lie between 1 and 100, right? This is my domain constraint, right? Key constraint, ensure uniqueness. For example, roll number must be unique, right? Key constraint means it ensures the uniqueness of the attribute, right? Suppose roll number, this is my key constraint. It describes uniqueness, right? It ensures uniqueness. Entity integrity constraint. Primary keys cannot be null. Referential integrity constant. Foreign key value must be in reference table, right? Now, what is relationship? A relationship represents association among entities. So these are entities, right? And what relation they have between, what association they have between them is defined by relationship, right? Now, types of relationships. One-to-one, one entity connected to only one entity. For example, one person is an entity and it is connected to one entity which is one passport. So this is one-to-one. Now, one to many, one entity connected to many entities. एक entity होगा वो कई एंटिटीज से कनेक्टेड होगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल टीचर इज एन एंटिटी and it is connected to many students, right? So it is one to many. Now many to many entities connected to many entities. For example, students enroll in many courses and course contain many students, right? Students, courses, this is many to many, right? Now, right, we will discuss about the hierarchical model, right? So it was developed in 1960s and its structure looked like upside down tree, right? The structure of hierarchical model uses parent-child relationship. Hierarchical model uses parent-child relationship. Each child has only one parent, right? Each child has only one parent, right? For example, a company structure forms a tree. It starts from CEO, then manager 1, then employee, then second employee, and then manager 2, which has employee 3, right? This forms a tree. Now, network model. It was created to overcome limitations of hierarchical model. Why? Because hierarchical model supports one to many relationship, right? And it has fast access if hierarchy is known, right? Now, network model looks like a graph instead of a tree. It supports complex relationships, that is many to many relationships. For example, network model example: a student and course, right? One student can join many course, one course can have many students, which is many to many relationship, right? Now, example of relational model. For example, I am writing this example: student table, roll number, name, department, right? This is an example of relational model. What is basic idea of relational model? The data is stored in tables. Data is stored in tables. Tables are called relations. And rows are called tuples, and columns are called attributes, right? Now, SQL is a structured query language. It is used to insert data, update data, delete data, and retrieve data, right? Now, keys in relational model. So, primary key uniquely identify each row, right? Keys in relational model: primary key uniquely identifies each row. example roll number, right? And foreign key, it creates relationship between tables, creates relationship between tables, right? For example, department, right? Relationship between tables. And then entity relationship, ER model. The purpose of ER model was used for database design visualization. It represents entities, attributes, relationships graphically. Now, ER diagram components. So for ER diagram, a rectangle represents entity, oval represents attribute, and diamond represents relationship, right? For example, let me show you an ER model. This is an example of ER model. This is my entity grade. This is my attribute. This is also my attribute, right? This is my entity. This is my attribute. And this is also my attribute, right? Now, we will discuss about now object-oriented model. It is based on object-oriented programming concept. So main idea of object-oriented model is it forms together data and methods. Data and methods together form object, right? And object contains attributes, methods and relationships. Attributes and objects contain attributes, method and relationship. Now, class is a collection of similar objects. What is class? It is collection of similar objects, right? Now, features of object oriented model, right? So first is encapsulation, in which data and functions are together taken, and then inheritance, child class inherits parent properties. Polymorphism, same method behaves differently, right? Now, an example of object oriented model. Suppose this is entity and this is attribute. This is an example of object oriented model. Now, object relational model. So why object relational model was created? Relational model excellent for table data, and object oriented model was excellent for complex objects. So combining the features of relational model and object oriented model gave us object relational model, right? Features of object relational model was tables plus objects. It was user defined type, complex attributes, and it had inheritance support. Right, an example of object relational model is, suppose this is entity and these are attributes: roll integer, name char, city char, age integer, student info, and get CGPA, right? And then grade, registration number, char, roll integer, CGPA integer, and marks details. This is an example of object relational model. So this was all for this video. Now we will discuss next thing in next video.